This episode is brought to you by Flow Sports and Flow Grappling, the streaming platform dedicated for fans of grappling, rugby, basketball, volleyball, swimming, cycling, and much more. If you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you'll want to head straight to Flow Grappling. They stream all the major events, IBJJF, ADCC, WNO, and the Pan Ams. And yes, even the IBJJF European Masters, where you could have watched me win gold. Tap the link in the show notes or go to podcastportugal.com to subscribe and get access to all the action. This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. Today I'm joined by Samuel Lyons, or Sam. I'm not quite sure how he likes to be called. He's the creator behind Enter Portugal, a digital platform exploring the country's rich history, culture, and natural beauty. His passion for Portugal comes through in every post, and his journey here promises to be just as interesting as the stories he tells. Samuel, or Sam, a big welcome.
Thanks, Justin. It's funny actually that the start that actually Samuel was when I came here at the beginning, and especially with Portuguese people, I'd introduce myself, and they'd always lean over or lean in when I said Sam, and I realized that Sam is not a very common name, so I started using Samuel. So actually, officially, every single document, because it is my birth name, is Samuel Lyons over here. But Sam is what most friends would call me. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a few friends who Portuguese Samuels, and they have the shortened version of that is Samu.
I never heard that. Samu.
Samu.
Oh, I like that. It's kind of cool.
But could be a
new name for 2025.
yeah. Look, I've been following your Instagram posts, and it's really interesting, your coverage of the Portuguese history, and I've just recently stumbled across a really interesting post about the O'Neals, who arrived at Lisbon in whatever century. Tell us something about that.
Mid 18th century. That story was weirdly as well. I don't think I did like history when I was in school, but I didn't realize the level of passion I've had for history since I moved here. And Ireland is a very historical country as well. Coming from Ireland, we have fantastic history, but here the deep dive on history has been something which really has made me love the richness. That's something about Portugal, which is so much history. It's like so many different cultural influences which you see across the country. But the O'Neal story was a year ago, just over a year ago, was coming up to St. Patrick's Day, and I was like, wonder is there many connections to Ireland and Portugal, because you don't really see it very obviously in the country. It's not something where they have quite a strong connection with the UK, but not such a strong connection with Ireland. So I was doing my research, and I use a lot of AI to help me research because it's a faster way of getting through all the data that's out there. And it was saying that there was some history between Ireland and Portugal going back, I think, even to the 13th century. I think it was from 13th, 14th century. So then I kept researching this, and then I came across this O'Neal family, and I was like, oh wow! So I wrote a blog actually about this family. So I'd started my research over a year ago, and I was fascinated by it. It's quite a cool story. So I wrote a blog about it a year ago. I posted on my blog. And then this year came along, and I was like, actually, I wouldn't mind doing. I suppose my format has changed quite a bit, where it was always a bit challenging to try to do when Instagram only had 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'd be doing like 500 years of history in 60 seconds, which is challenging, as you can imagine. So when they started increasing it to 90 seconds, and then more recently up to 3 minutes, it gave me a much more opportunity to really go into more detail and pull those stories out for what they deserve to be. But the O'Neal story was something different level. I was like, this family, one of the original High Kings of Ireland, from the Ulster. I don't know if you know about Ireland, but we have four provinces, so Ulster, Leinster, Connacht, and Munster. And this original bloodline, who would have been fighting against the British at the time, that when this family, who were from this line of kings, ended up leaving Ireland because of the troubles in Ireland, and heading to Lisbon, of all places. And Ireland did have actually a University of Ireland in Lisbon at the time, and it was kind of quite a strong. I suppose the big difference was the fact that both Ireland and Portugal were very Catholic at the time.
Yep.
So it would have been quite a strong relationship from that point of view. So yeah, so anyway, the story, the more and more I researched it, was just one of those. I say I use the word deep dive. There's just
Rabbit
so
hole.
much to the story. Yeah, it was, and I love rabbit holes. So it was just like the the level of the level of depth that went into this family who kind of got here, say, in the early 1700s, and then to this day, there's still somebody who's alive and who's still part of that bloodline. And the story they had of what they did in their life in Portugal was just astounding. It's one of the most amazing stories, you know. You're just like, wow, like what's incredible this Irish family to come over and through all the adversity they've been through to make their mark and to exist within Portuguese society and to fully integrate within Portuguese society, but also still holding on to their Irishness. They still have the O'Neill name written very clearly, you know, in their family line. So um,
Do they still
there
exist?
is
They still exist now, do they, in Lisbon, as descendants of that original family?
they do, and the Hugh O'Neill is the current head of the family, and he's recognized. They got officially recognized, I think, by the Pope as being of the hereditary line of royalty of this line, you know, bloodline. But I think Hugh kind of, because there's quite a large family with cousins and
Mm.
everything, I think he kind of said, okay, yeah, I'm officially recognized, but I share it amongst my cousins or whatever. But he still goes back to Ireland quite a bit, and he's part of the heraldry of Ireland, and he's big into like supporting kind of like the Irish historical line, and you know, like looking at history. And I was one of my most amazing. I was about to release the video. It was the 17th of March, which is our St. Patrick's Day, which you may or may not know.
Mhm.
And I was meant to release the video on the 17th of March because that was the whole point of doing the video. And I was invited to the Irish ambassador's residence for an event. And I was there and I was like chatting to people. And then I saw this gentleman, an older gentleman, standing at the doorway. And I was like, is that the guy, Hugh O'Neill? And I was like, I was so excited. It was like seeing him, it was like meeting a celebrity.
Yeah.
I went over and I was like, oh my God, you were never going to believe. And he was like, what? He was so shocked by it. He was like, the fact that somebody had actually done a story about his family. He was
And
very,
he knew fully the story of his family. Or
oh, he like he very much supports the yeah, say trying to people to remember they're very proud of their Irish heritage, and like that's one of the most amazing bit about their family is that even they had like these beautiful houses. They were they were connected to the royal family of Portugal, and they were friends with I think King Jean. I can't remember which one. I don't get it wrong, and people in Portugal would be upset with me. But they were connected to the bloodline or the Portuguese royalty, and when the Portuguese nobility moved to Cascais, they ended up building two houses in Cascais. And inside the house, they put like shamrocks and Irish ancestral heritage stuff throughout it to remind the family that, you know, as much as they're Portuguese, they're very proud of their Irish bloodline. So,
what a great.
so yeah, so to meeting Hugh it was like I say meeting celebrities. So yeah, I was invited to their property, which is they still have a property in Setúbal in Quinta. I remember Quinta, one of the houses in Setúbal. So yeah, so it was quite exciting to meet somebody who you're doing a story about. It's kind of cool.
What a great story. And what drew you to Portugal in the first place, and sort of how because how did you come up with the idea of storytelling? Basically, I could call it.
Yeah. So I think it was COVID. A couple of friends had come over here in the latter of 2020. I was probably at a point in my life where maybe a bit of a relationship got going on, which was kind of maybe at the end of a relationship, and the country was really quite the lockdown in Ireland was quite tough during COVID. And my mental health was struggling, and I kind of knew I needed to have a break, so I ended up leaving in May 21. And it was more of a holiday. I came here for a long holiday to kind of do some healing, and I just fell in love. I was like, I'd never experienced. I've fallen in love before, but falling in love with a place, I'd never experienced that same sensation.
Mm.
I remember we'd been out on the beach in Arabida or Arabida, and we were
Habida.
driving. We were driving. How do you say it?
Rábida.
Habit.
Yeah, I find it
Habita.
hard to roll the R's. That's why I
Well,
know
yeah,
that
well,
you
Irish
get
people
this.
don't have it. So,
Yeah.
so we were going back across the Ponta de Abril 25, and I was looking down at the city, and I was feeling amazed. I was like, "Oh my God, And this is probably I was here 2 months or something at the time, maybe 2 or 3 months. And I just looked at Lisbon, and I was like, "Wow, I'm so in love, so deeply, deeply in love.
Mhm.
Like the depth of love that you only have for a person. I never experienced it as a place before, and I realized, wow." And I was like, so that was probably the beginning of it. And but then the other thing that hit me is what kind of like what began the storytelling was not really about the storytelling. It was actually something different. It was I noticed a lot of people here, a lot of expats, people when you come here and you speak English, I suppose you end up connecting to the expat community. You don't get as many opportunities to speak to Portuguese people, and I was really conscious of a lack of adventure and exploration. If people would be here, and when I got here, I went everywhere straight away. I was in Barreiro again. I got that wrong pronunciation. And I went to Seychelles, and I did like the whole city. I went around all of the city, and there's people who've been here for like 2 years and never crossed the river to the other side. And I was like, "You've never been." And I realized that there was this little bit of a kind of which I'm not really a big fan of, is that they get here and they eat and they go to their hipster coffee shops and they go to their hipster restaurants. And I'm like, why did you move to a different country if you're just going to live
Mhm.
in an Irish version or an American version of like integrate, like go to eat a menu de dia and go to the local tascas and like see the country for what it is.
Mhm.
And I just fell in love with I say the love began with Lisbon, and then it grew to Portugal as I traveled around and realized that Portugal as a country, again, not trying to put Portugal down, but I feel that it does a great job at getting people to come. I know that gets a lot of people come. They go to Lisbon, they go to Cascais, go to Sintra, they go to Porto, and then the Algarve has been there much longer as a destination. But so then, as I started researching it, I realized 76% of all tourism in Portugal goes to a very small part of the country. And as I traveled around, I realized that this country has like a depth of culture that just and history that just blew me away. And I was like, why is there not less? Why is there so little known about that internationally? So it began with that as an objective, which was my objective was kind of like around a sustainable tourism model. So I was building a website with the idea of how do we get people to see more than just those areas, getting people to really understand, to integrate properly, to learn about the food, learn about the culture, and learn about this and these hidden gems that Portugal has to offer. And that was the beginning of the journey. I think was that, and then the storytelling became part of that, I suppose. And I think I fell in love with the narrative of bits of history and bits of stories that were kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a country which it unfolds and you have to look and it unfolds in front of you. I think there is a national, possibly a Portuguese cultural modesty. I would say they don't like to shout too much about what they've got. An almost antithesis of sort of the USA, where in the USA they like to shout and market everything that they have, and this is amazing. And in Portugal, it tends to be a little bit more downplayed. I've noticed.
Yeah,
There is.
so there is quite a good national tourism. And like the Portuguese people do travel around Portugal, like they're very proud of their country and they're every right to be proud. It's a
Mm,
stunning, stunning country with so much, and it's so diverse. Whether you're in the north and Viana de Castelo or you're down the like, it's because of its history with so many cultural influences. You see, like in this festivals throughout the whole year from February through to November, and they've got like medieval festivals and they've got like local festivals around food, and they got it's just to me, I'm just blown away by it as a country.
mm.
I just think it's astounding to have such diversity as a country.
And
In one small, tiny like I come from Ireland. Ireland has it as well in its own way. And actually, that was the other thing I noticed was that Ireland, we don't have we don't have any natural resources. We have human, what's it called, knowledge, the knowledge resource. We have people with talent, but we don't have anything. We don't have like anything. We're a tiny island sitting on the west of Europe, need English speaking. And so what Ireland did was we used to have. I remember because I grew up. I'm 50, so like I grew up in Ireland where we came from a heavy recession, years of recession, and we were an impoverished country. And as we grew, we used to have like a 3 to 4 month tourist season. Also because of the hangover from the IRA, a lot of people didn't go to Ireland. So Ireland had a very short tourist season, and the tourism board, which I give it to them, called Board Fulcha and Tourism Ireland, did an amazing job at showing the diversity of opportunity to visit these historical sites in different parts of Ireland. And they created the Wild Atlantic Way. And they really did a really clever job at building a tourism model which got people to leave the city centre, and go out to the west of Ireland, even if you're just there for a weekend. And I was like, so part of me saw that Ireland had done a really good job at creating a more sustainable tourism model. And I thought there was an opportunity to do that with Enter Portugal.
Have you discovered any of I've been quite, because we moved to the Alentejo, and we.
Oh, you're in Alentejo?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
we used to live north of Lisbon in Ericeira. We used to live in the Algarve. Used to live in the west coast near Alifana, actually, which I noticed you've been to. And now we've moved a little bit inland. We have a farm, and we've been exploring.
My dream.
We've been exploring the border country, the border with Spanish on the Guadiana.
Oh, wow.
And there, if you're into the history and the castles and things, it's absolutely, completely crazy, really, because you obviously the Portuguese, and maybe even the Moors originally had sort of established lots of hill castles.
Yeah.
And they are
Yeah.
amazing to defend, obviously, Spanish coming over or
Yes,
whatever.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing about these places. I've been living here for 10 years and lived and knew nothing about them. And now I'm discovering them, and you can read into them, but still it's a little bit like, and Rita, my partner, she's, I think there's a little bit of a generational gap in terms of learning history. She said, like, her mom's generation, they know a lot more about history because they were taught it more in schools. And I think since they had the revolution, the schooling structure in history was talking a little bit more about the revolution and not about the aristocratic families and the history and the royal family and all of the things that sort of preceded the revolution. So there's almost like a generational gap in Portuguese education, well, according to Rita anyway. That they don't know much about this history. But then I noticed a lot of the comments on your Instagram. I see that there's a whole bunch of people that have a lot of knowledge on. You put your that one of the nice thing was about the São Jorge, the castle on the top of Lisbon, and that was a really cool story. And I read through all of the comments on there because you learn so much,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's quite a contentious, especially you have a lot of people who are a bit like, who are you? At the beginning it was quite tough because it was like, I think, and we have this, I think most countries, but we have Irish people are very strong to this as well. We have a term which is called blow-ins. Yeah. And like, if you come from like one of our counties, one of our provinces in Ireland, and you move from like, say, Dublin to Wicklow, the Wicklow people will be like, oh, the blow-in. But like 15 years later, you're still blowing. They're still treating you differently if you go into the chipper and go to get a bag of chips. The local will be served before the blow-in, Mm. So at the beginning, when I began, because the channel's now, I think a year, it's coming up on 2 years in July. Well, at the beginning, I was like a total blow-in. And they had no respect for me at all. They were just like, who are you coming into our country, telling us about our country? And then bit by bit, people are like, you just have to kind of hold on, hold strong, hold strong, keep doing what you're passionate about. And suddenly I noticed there was a change. I can't remember what point, it probably a year ago, under a year ago. There was a change. Suddenly the community of followers who kind of respected the fact that I was trying to do something were like really proud and really delighted with these stories. I started fighting on my behalf. So somebody would start saying something about me, and one of the Portuguese people would be fighting, going, leave him alone. It's like, okay. I was like, hey, I've moved to the next phase. So, well, one of the things about history, which I think is, because I think I'm a bit of what you call them, a pop anthropologist. I love psychology and anthropology, the study of people, and the Portuguese people fascinate me, and the history. When you see the history and the layers of history, and when you mentioned, like, there's a lot of, maybe it's like, I don't want to put any words, but from an outside point of view, in my humble opinion, so I'm not saying it's fact, is that there's kind of maybe some shame over different parts of the history. And it's kind of like, you people that call them the royalists, so who supported the royals, and then you people who supported Salazar, and so you've all these different groups, and it's still quite fresh. So the country gone through quite an enormous amount of turmoil in 100 years, like an enormous amount of turmoil in 100 years since the fall of 1910 or 19 whatever it was 1910 roughly when the royals were taken out, and then it went through. I think it was like it had like 45 governments in a very short period of time, and then like it was really really struggling, and that's where Salazar, I think, comes in. But it's like, I think when I meet people and I talk to them, there is that lack of, especially with the younger generation, there's a lack of kind of understanding of the depth of their history. And also, a lot of people, as you probably noticed in the comments, a lot of people are like, which is true, Afonso Henriques, like the the Portugal as a name begins in whatever the 11th or 12th century. But Portugal as a place and has such a incredibly long history, like the megaliths were here, the Celts were here, the Visigoths were here, the Swabies were here. There's so many other culture history to this country than just, when the Crusaders take over when the Christians take over in the 12th century. So
we had a really good guest on here called Freddie Silva, and he spoke at length about the Templars. And how they were responsible for creating the first state of Portugal as a theory. They came over here, and the first king, Dom Henriques, gave them basically hid them here, and then they sort of thanked the Portuguese royal family by giving a lot of their money that they'd collected as Templars. And that funded the explorations. So that's a story.
So supposedly this, I don't know if it's true, but supposedly my memory of researching the story was that the Crusaders were heading down on their crusade to Jerusalem, and there was a storm off Porto the night that they were traveling down, and they went into for safety. They ported in like just off Porto, as far as I know, and Afonso was leading his charge at that point. And I think whilst I don't know if that's true or is that's a myth, but supposedly they met on that night, and he asked would they join him to help sack Lisbon and take the Moors out of who had control over Lisbon. So he was trying to build. So that supposedly was the story, and I'm not sure is that true. Sometimes you're like, because I do so much reading, so much historical research, and you have to be careful of your sources. And people are always saying to me, "No, this happened, and that happened," and I'm like. So it's like, but I believe that's the story, was that they were heading down. I'm sure somebody will give us a comment on this one and tell me that I got it wrong, but I'm nearly sure that's what happened, was that the Crusaders were going down, and so that's how the relationship began. I think that's how the relationship began.
Yeah, I mean, I know that it's debatable whether the Templar Knights were actually Crusaders. That's something, because I always understood, because they have the same insignia with the red cross and the white tunics, and which are carried over into the Portuguese flags on a lot of the discovery ships. But there is a question whether the Templars were actually Crusaders at all. It's quite interesting.
Okay. Because I think the Templars also, I'm trying to remember my research, so much bits of information about this history, but I think the Templars begin in France, don't they? Is that the origin of the order?
Yeah.
They were called different names as well. I think it's in France they begin. I'm not sure anyway, but
I know they. I know they certainly ended in France. That's when, because I think the king at the time, the Templars were owed a lot of money by king. I'm not sure which king. I think it was King Charles. And he basically, rather than repay them, he just thought, "Oh, I'm going to disband them."
Had them killed.
Had them killed. Accused them of witchcraft and
I know
it was pretty crazy.
The story was quite dark. I was like, okay, well. But Portugal supported them, and they became the Order of Christ, as far as I know. Exactly. That's how they changed.
And the president of Portugal is the head of the Order of Christ. So, which is quite interesting to think that it continues to this day.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating. Like then there's also the connection to, I think we could get into the whole conspiracy side, but I'm really sure there's a connection to the Freemasons as well. So I think there's which is actually, I have to do it as a story. I love like a secret society, and they have a museum in Barrio Alto, and Freemasons, you can go in and go to the secret society museum. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I was like, cool.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think there's a lot of things we don't know. I think there's, I think it would be too high. I would imagine that it's more likely to be true than not, that there's a lot of secret societies that combine to help organize things and influence things. It would make
Yeah,
more
well,
sense.
yeah. One of the things that on the I think it was my story about the name of Portugal, Portiscale story.
Kali.
There was quite a lot of anger over that one because I think a lot of people in the north were like anyway. It was one of those more contentious, which actually contentious stories actually end up being better from a virality point of view.
Oh yeah,
If
sure.
you've
You
got
get
people
more comments.
arguing and
Yeah,
fighting on your thread, you're like suddenly you're like, oh.
you want to create arguments, Samuel.
Well, no, Jim. Because Jim, I put it like that, like the Saint South George Castle. I'd say that was like 2 weeks of work went into that video.
Yeah.
So probably a full 7 days of research and then 7 days of production. Like people don't understand the amount of hours that goes into creating some of the stories, So I do try really hard to cross reference, and I don't just no, like there's just so many sources, but I try to make sure I try to check as much as possible. I don't just like go, I think that's an idea and post something. So,
Well, I
but
mean,
that
history is
particular
a collation of different people's ideas. Really, it's a it's a
yeah,
collection of
yeah.
stories. You can be, you know, and
And,
actually,
that particular one was quite interesting as well because loads of people were like, and what was interesting when I spoke to a Portuguese person afterwards is that they said that it depends where you're born in Portugal. Sometimes you're and when you were taught history, kind of like what you were saying, is that sometimes the history was taught different ways by different people. So.
Yeah, I find it fascinating as well. The production. You said it takes 7 days to create that, and do you use AI to create the imagery on that?
Yeah. So what I try to do is that's the bit that makes it a bit harder. Is I try to. So as an example, we'll give you an example. The São George Castle one, or Castelo São George, that one there's a character. Now supposedly now that I later found out that it might be a myth, but let's forget about the myth part. So there's this character who's Martin Moniz, who was supposedly, whether it be myth or fact or whatever, there's a bust of him in a bust of him in Castle de São George, but like I think he has a broken nose or something. So I take that bust and I ask AI to regenerate an image, and I try to get it as accurate as possible. So I try to take historical imagery of. I turned that. Oh, hold on a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost the headphones. So I tried to rebuild characters based on any photographic imagery.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And then I turned that into like a photograph, as much as close to a photograph as possible. And then I use AI to animate that photograph. So that takes quite a bit of work because it screws up a lot. So I spend quite a bit of money goes into it as well, because it's like you have to generate so many multiple versions of something before you get like the correct image that looks actually realistic. And then you're trying to generate actual like imagery based on that. So most of the stories where you see me using AI, like the one about Portiscale, all of the characters in that, Afonso, the image of Afonso on the horse, is based on a painting of Afonso. And actually, I think that's one of the best ones I've ever seen. It actually looks like him. It's insane. So I try to build people based on any historical imagery that I can find.
That's fascinating.
And build it based off that. So, and I try to I'm doing my first YouTube video, which I put off because it's so much work went into it. Is my first 14 minutes piece because I think it's the most amazing person I've ever read in my life. I'm her total groupie. Is Caterina de Braganza. She's just amazing woman in this world. Like honestly, if you want to read, like this deserves to be an Netflix TV series. It would kick Bridgerton's ass. It's one of the amazing life stories ever. Is her life and her mother, Louise Guzman, and her father was King Juan. From her birth right through to her death, which is like I think she dies at 69 or 70. She becomes the Queen of England. Her story is.
She used to wear trousers. She was one of the first women in England to. She used to wear trousers. Basically, she used to.
Yeah, but not that she was a Catholic queen in a Protestant country. Do you understand how challenging? She barely spoke any English at the time. She spoke a little bit of Spanish. That's how herself and Charles chatted. And he was a total not a philanthropist. That'd be great if he was a philanthropist. A total philanderer who had multiple mistresses. And one of his mistresses was her bedmaid who used to dress her every day. It was like her story is one of the most amazing historical stories I've ever read in my life. I've spent hundreds of hours researching her stories. I'm turning that one into my first 14-minute full video, but it's a lot of work. It's like you have
Yeah.
to understand that that's probably maybe 500 hours of work probably needs to go into to create it. Because it's just so much work. But I'm building all the characters off all of the original imagery that we have for King Charles, any paintings. So yeah, so that's my current project, but it's a lot of work. So
Yeah. Have you been to Mafra Palace?
yes, I loved it actually. Yeah,
Fantastic.
incredible actually. It's just a bit pity because it's a bit run down,
It
but
is.
what?
It is a little bit, isn't it? And there's so many more rooms that you can't see because if you look for the tour and then you think, where is that room? And there must be so many like rooms with a bunch of furniture or you know what I mean, like stuff,
Yeah, no, no, yeah. Well,
storerooms that would
and
be
also,
equally as
did you hear?
fascinating.
Did you hear the story that when we were doing the tour that she lived on one side of us and he lived on the others in the like the West
Yeah,
Wing and the East
they,
side thing,
they look
and like
completely different.
it must be like a 15-minute walk across. I don't think they saw each other very often.
No, no, I don't think so. Um, yeah, it's fascinating because you go through and they both each side, each wing is decorated very differently. It's fascinating.
Absolutely,
Whether
it's a
they've set
pity.
it up like that, I don't know. Who knows? But
Have you been to Palacio de Juda?
no,
That one is probably one of the because they, which is a really genius idea. I think sometimes I think about like people are. I understand there's a lot of anger over how the tourism has affected, which I respect totally. There's a government responsibility to build a more sustainable tourism model. Although um, there are lots of benefits from tourism as well, but we're not going to go into that. But one of the
mm.
things about Palacio de Judar was that they, which was really clever, was that they, because you think about this, I think Portugal probably has more palaces than any country in the world. And no, literally. And to restore these back to their original is a phenomenal amount of money. You don't understand the
Yeah, the
cost that's
maintenance. I
involved
know.
to restore one room. It's probably like 1 million or whatever to restore
Mm.
a room. It was really clever, and it's a stunning, stunning, stunning building. Is Palacio de Judar is that they restored these rooms, but what they did was they got a corporate sponsor to pay for the restoration. So when you go into the room, it says, I can't remember what the company name is, but it says room sponsored by restoration of room is sponsored by. And I was like, that's a genius way of doing it,
Yeah.
because something like Mafra, it'd be beautiful to see it given a bit more restoration. It feels a little bit, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, it has a little bit of a political significance, I think, Mafra. I mean,
uh,
it basically collapsed the finances of the country, the building of that palace.
uh, oh, really? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
I don't know whether you've ever read Saramago.
No, no.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, I know. Yeah, but I didn't know that story.
yeah, I can't remember the title of the book now, but it's a sort of satire of of that relationship between the king and his queen, the love story.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. Oh, that sounds like a good another reel for me.
yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
sort of
I
set in
go on.
Mafra.
Say that again.
It's actually sort of set in Mafra, yeah, so in the palace. So yeah, I think it has some sort of political significance, and it could be why they don't restore it. I don't know,
Oh, wow.
It
But
lives.
I suppose it's a cost as well. Like if you're a country of like what 10 million people, and you got lots of other costs going on to keep your country. Like I know a bit contentious to go down that road, but yeah. So I suppose that there's a kind of like if you're turning to your people, and you've got people starving or people who
Mhm.
haven't kind of homes, and you're like, well, let's spend 50 million in restoring Mafra. It's like really is that a priority? So yeah.
Yeah,
Where money is spent is a very important thing when you're in government, I think so.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Especially when they built that palace, they bankrupt the country. It literally that the treasury was just emptied. Yeah, it's fascinating. So many
You mean
stories.
because of the building of the palace, or just the country wasn't in a very
I think that the story that I heard was literally the king. He was so in love with his wife. I think it was his wife, could have been mistress. I'm not sure, but he literally spent the all of the treasury and bankrupted the country building the palace. And so I
nice?
think that's why the significance of that palace is a little bit
Oh
controversial.
wow, okay, contentious.
But I could be just picking up bits of information and just spouting a load of rubbish. It's quite possible. But it's also, but it's if people, listeners, go and check it out and go and read, and leave some comments about some of the truths that you may find. Um, yeah, but you
Yeah,
how
that's always the thing with this country is that they say once you it's like if you have a scab on your leg and you pick at it, it's kind of like yeah, there's so many stories. stories, which just are fascinating. Sorry, you're gonna ask something.
No, I'm just so impressed because like the story about Sao Jorge, you got sort of 1.1 million views on Instagram. I noticed, and I think you just told me that the Instagram has been going for just a couple of years. So,
Yeah, and coming
how
up
do
on
you technically how do you get to? It's just great content.
Yeah, I suppose it comes back from I was thinking about this morning. I'm 30 years working in technology. I started in oh God, I started we ran first Dublin's first internet cafe in 1995,
Okay.
and one of my very first website projects was a community-based project. I used to live in a little town called Cabinteely in Dublin, and I built a website for the community to try to bring people together. I'm an addict for community. I just think community is the most important thing. And it was about how do you get people to you know, I think the term for me is like a watering hole where people come and share stories and learn from each other. Da, da, da. And then I ended up, so that one kind of lasted a couple of years, and I think I gave it back to the church afterwards. And then I lived in this other area in Dublin called Kimmage, and I built another one. So I had this thing about building, and again, with no, I put finance. So my finance is my last thought, which is always stupid. But anyway, I built another one, and it kind of had more of a business model, but it was around community. So I think with this, for me, when I started working on it, is that is the community engagement piece is very important. It's not just I'm trying not to just broadcast. I'm looking for interaction. I'm looking for. So I think I'm pretty good at responding to nearly every single comment if I can.
Yeah.
Which takes quite a bit of work. And if anybody ever shares my story, I thank every single person, of course, for sharing the story. So I try to engage with the community because for me, I feel a sense of pride in the fact that I'm creating something which is of value to you, you're enjoying it. Or if I do something wrong, you tell me and I can. So I think the piece that works on it is the community engagement helps it grow because people feel you're not just this, channel that's broadcasting for no purpose. For me, it's like I'm trying to build something which has value for everybody who's part of it. So I think maybe that, and also a lot of work. So like I've tried to cut back a little bit because it was kind of ridiculous. My partner was wanting to kill me at the time. I was probably spending 40 to 50 hours a week working on it.
Yeah.
On top of my actual job, which I get paid for because I don't get paid.
Ditch the plastic and the toxins. Mother's Earth dishwasher papers are made from non-toxic, eco-certified materials, so they're safer for your home, your health, your family, and the planet. No bulky plastic bottles, no waste, just clean dishes, shipped anywhere in Europe and 3 times cheaper than those toxic tabs you buy in the supermarkets. Click the link in the show notes to start saving. Fascinating to see that your use of AI and I mean, I had a little bit of a go with it the other day, trying to do a little promo video, and it just sort of gave up after a while. But all these things are going to be very exciting for what we do, particularly. And I noticed you also, I was looking on lions.net, and you have another website.
Lions.club, yeah. That was my original kind of.
Sorry. Yeah. And you have an internship project on there where you're getting students, a call out to students to get involved with AI and promotion and content creation and all that. It's very interesting. It's what you were talking about, reaching out into the community, which is nice.
Because honestly, to take so Enter Portugal is part of a much bigger project. So I think I kind of jumped track. I went from my concept, which was around building a sustainable tourism kind of model or a project, and then I was using the Instagram to help support that project, and then the Instagram became the big thing. So at some point so there is meant to be there is, Sam, there is meant to be a business model to this, which is that, like doing tours, like trying to get people outside of the city, getting people to leave the city or go to these less well-known spots, and to use history and storytelling to kind of use that, to kind of embellish those journeys, As an example, I was going to say I'm a hippie, but a bit of a hippie. But I suppose I consider myself to be a bit of a Celt or a Druid, kind of like having those kind of old pagan kind of beliefs. And in Ireland, which is a very Catholic country, it's funny. Ireland's one of those countries which are you from the UK or where are you from?
I'm actually from near Cornwall. You know Cornwall? It's
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of a
I
little
have
bit.
family.
It's more Irish than English, I'd imagine.
Yeah, yeah, I actually have family from Cornwall
Yeah.
as well. So, but so like one of the kind of one of the things we do is which is coming up actually in 8 days, which is the summer solstice. So I always in Ireland would celebrate the winter and the summer solstice. For me, they're kind of like they're big days. They're really important. And the summer solstice on June 21st. And in Ireland, we would always celebrate. We would do something. We would go somewhere as a group, and we have these amazing locations, which are kind of like these old Celtic settlements and stuff. So when I was researching for not for last year, but the year before, I was wondering was that I knew that they had quite a lot of megalithic tombs and stuff. So and dolmens and lots of these old historical sites. And I found there was one outside of Evra.
Hmm.
It's around 20 minutes or no, 10-minute drive from Evra. And it's this astounding circular. Have you been to this this Almalades?
No,
It's
I
the
haven't been to
standing.
the mega. No, well, we live only an hour away from Everton, so maybe it's a good trip.
Okay. So we went to this location, myself and a group of friends, and it was kind of like we were doing something kind of spiritual and something to celebrate the. So I expected, like, if you go to one of these locations in Ireland on June 21st, there's hundreds of people, and there's bonfires, and there's people dancing, and there's people dressed up in Celtic clothing, and police people dressed up as druids,
Yeah.
and it's a big set, and stay the whole night through the night of the June 21st until the 22nd. So I brought a group of friends, thinking this would be quite a big thing. So I arrived at this one in Evra, and I was like, I think there was three other people there or something.
It's not
And we were
like
like,
Stonehenge where they have a whole police force out there, Salisbury
yeah,
police
yeah.
force on the
And
plane.
I was like, what the hell? Why is there nobody here? This is like this site. The site is like I think 7,000 years old.
Yeah.
Like this thing was built by people who, when you think of like the history to put these stones, which are a couple of ton or whatever. And somebody back 7,000 years ago, when they didn't have any form of thought, let's build this symbolic clock, which is what it is, and it's designed so that the light hits it at a certain time. It's perfectly aligned with the solstices and stuff. And I was like, kind of going, wow, this is kind of like. So there's a lot of that type of stuff that people don't know about. And for me, no, of course, we don't want to like overrun any of these places, but there's just so many little treasures, which I always thought would be nice to bring people on journeys to explore the much broader context of Portugal. And so that was kind of the original idea, was trying to build tours. And I think that's at some point I need to get back around to, if I want to make Enter Portugal sustainable. I would love to grow it into have a team, start small, get like went out to all the universities, they never got back to me. I contacted 10 international universities and asked. I said, this is the company. Lions Club is a digital consultancy with over 20 years in the business, actually nearly 30 years. And then Enter Portugal is a project around building sustainable tourism. And I'd love to I had a role for one paid intern, part-time role for a paid intern, and then for an unpaid intern who would learn about AI, and I teach them about leadership and teach them all the different things I know. So, but at this point, I've had nobody who's come back to me with the
Frustrating.
wanting to be.
You should
But
definitely talk to the guest that I had, Freddie Silva, because he actually he's Portuguese but lives in the States, and he's written a couple of books. He takes tours to Tomar and to talk about the Templar Knights and
by the
stuff.
tempers, yeah.
And he was also, I think he's coming over to Portugal soon because he's just released a documentary on megaliths. It's called
Oh wow,
Megalith. Well, there's two documentaries out there. One is called Megalith and one is called Megaliths. So
okay.
it's a little bit confusing. I'm not sure which one it is, but
Learn Portuguese.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's in English, is it?
Yeah, it's in English. Yeah, yeah. He's made it
Oh,
for the American market. So it's not. I haven't seen it yet. It hasn't quite come out yet on YouTube, but it's out on a paid platform, I think. But yeah, I mean, he's he's a really good storyteller, and it's the type of thing that he does. He monetizes what he can do by taking small tours, and he's booked out. He can't. I said to him, take me around tomorrow, and he said, I'm full.
That's not, there is only one of me.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where it can get quite tiring, that kind of thing, because you can't sort of multiply yourself. Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like for me, I think that's part of the thing is that like I really would love to find a way of, I say I would love to, like build a team. I'd love to find somebody who's passionate around tourism, um, and maybe I'd love to have maybe a Portuguese person involved at a more managerial level,
Mm-hmm.
and then a team of passionate creators who love creating and storytelling. And maybe it's just maybe I don't know if we're a similar generation or whatever, but like I'm just like as you can probably tell, I'm quite passionate about the
Yes.
project. And it's like it's trying to find people who get that level of excitement for what they do,
Yeah.
and it's kind of mine with a lot of the younger generation. I find is they're a bit like
Well, we were young. We were young once, right? And I remember being at school. I just, I was interested in a few things, but there was other things that distracted me, sports and whatever.
yeah, no,
It's only until sort of later on in life that I've got this crazy, insatiable hunger for learning and history, and it's almost too much now. I don't have enough time to do everything that I want.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you as well. Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. I saw it is a generational thing, I suppose, as well. But you do like I was always a bit crazy. So I think even when I was younger, I was always very passionate about things I ever did.
Yeah.
But it's trying to find it's probably 1 in 10,000 who have that kind of like
Inquisitiveness.
that absolute like passion for what they do. But that's what people like. I think when I had a poster I made up for the universities, and I put it in a few places, and I was like, I think one of the phrases I used was an out of box thinker. So it's those type of people who are kind of like, they're probably kind of like more like, I love this term, like we used to use a phrase, I think an English phrase, which is was it jack of all trades, master of none. But it's kind of that mindset that people are kind of a generalist. They're kind of like they're kind of intrigued by lots of things, but they have a passion, and they're hungry to kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I'm looking for people who are just that little bit different,
Yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe universities. It might not be the place. It might be people like us who just move here and just like, wow, look at that. No, if you ever need any help with investigating any of the castles or taking tours of people around here, I'd be really up for it. Really,
I would love to. You said that you're in Alentejo.
Yeah, with Alentejo. So we have at least 5 big castles that I don't know anything about. So 5 castles, sort of about an hour and a half drive away from me. So
there was another one as well. I know it's not Portugal, but I drove to Barcelona in my poor old camper van, which is I think the stage. But I drove across, and just as you cross the border into Spain, I think the town is called Badajoz. Is it? Is it Badajoz?
Badajoz.
Yeah, it's easy. So it's a Spanish town, isn't it?
Yeah,
just across the border.
Yeah. Although they do kind of speak sometimes a little bit of Portuguese Spanish on those border towns.
And they have a Roman site, don't they? They've got an amphitheater or something, don't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know Badajoz so well. I know Cáceres. Cáceres is fascinating. Cáceres. If you go a different way from you can go several different ways. If you go slightly north, you go for Cáceres, and it's where they filmed a lot of the what's that TV series with all the dragons and things?
Oh, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah. They filmed a lot of the last series of Game of Thrones in that town, so it's crazy history, crazy buildings.
That's not Monsanto. No, we're not talking about Monsanto, are we?
No, Cáceres.
Okay, cool.
Just over the border again.
Honestly, I think at this stage, when you live in Lisbon, you don't necessarily need to have a vehicle. So I did have a camper van, but she broke down on me, and then she got taken in by the police, and I think it's been destroyed now. But I really need to find a vehicle to be able to travel around. Like you can do a lot with the trains, but to really get to Portugal, like I want to do a story on the São Domingo mines. That story is absolutely fascinating.
Okay.
It's just like, the São Domingo mines?
No.
And that story is just another one of those amazing stories. But I need to get a vehicle. I need to get a small runaround that I can start. I would love to come and meet you, and we could do a reel together.
Yeah, that
On
would be
some.
really cool. We got a little studio here or here on the farm.
What
But
do you, when you say a farm? Is it a farm with just like not actually farming, just you
yeah,
with a
no,
few
we're
animals?
working all. It's a bit of a long story because we were much more of a working farm than we are now because I've managed to twist my leg backwards, and so I've been like literally out of action for 5 weeks coming up now. I can't even walk properly, so still waiting for my MRI results, and yeah, so that's been a bit of a bump. So we've missed all of our spring planting. They managed a bunch of our chickens all managed to get a disease, and so they're all gone. So yeah,
Oh
it's been a
wow!
hard couple. It's been a farming
But
couple of
it's
months, you know.
by far.
Yeah, but we've had everything plowed. We have a guy that comes over with his tractor and does all the
How many acres
harvesting.
do you have?
It's not very big. It's like 2.5 hectares. Yeah, it's
Oh
very
wow!
small. So,
Oh,
but we have.
it's my dream actually is to like, I mean, something small, like, chickens running around and a goat here and whatever,
Yeah,
but just
exactly.
some more connected to nature. I'd love to be
Yeah, and
out.
there's plenty of places around where I live. Really, if you don't go too close to the coast of Alentejo because it's quite expensive there.
Yeah, well, and,
Oh,
and there was an ad on Instagram. I think it was yesterday, and it was like if I had won the lotto, I was like, I want to buy it. It was like 20, 30 hectares. Did you see it? And it was like
oh,
this house on.
not the 3.3 million one that was
Yeah,
on that
that's the one.
island.
Three point
Yeah,
three
yeah, yeah,
million.
yeah. I think so many people saw that. That is fantastic. That was beautiful.
I was like, hey, can I win the lotto, please?
Yeah, we went up and visited last week. Last week's episode, we went and visited uh, Ana de Brito and her husband David de Brito, and they have 500 hectares on a
Wow.
lake there in Guadiana, literally on the Alcava Dam. And they have
Oh,
2 kilometers of lakeside property, and they have this. It's a
wow.
big, really old dad. I don't know how many farm buildings they have, but it's completely insane. And they're growing all their
Maybe,
own food.
maybe they'd give me a small bit of their land and a house.
I wouldn't be surprised. They have a plant. They have. You should go visit them. They have plenty of stuff there. It's a really cool story because they're doing like fully regenerative farming, and
Ah,
try to create. Their big issue is the governmental or the management system or the computer system or whatever governs the licensing of farms and what you can produce is very monoculture. So it's designed for one farm, one product, and then you can get a license to put that into the market. But with
ah,
a regenerative system, you have a multiple. You have cows, you
multiple.
have grains,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
grass, whatever. And
'Cause it regenerates within the system, doesn't it?
yeah,
It's
it's
kind of
like
like
the old. They're not inventing anything new. It's like the old system. The cows graze the
yeah.
fields, and then they pick the fruits, and whatever. But it's when you try to take all these multiple products to market, it's the computer says no.
Um,
And they're
it's
just
just
banging their heads against the wall at the moment, trying to get just to try to get this you know they're restoring the soil which is so important because we all need to eat, and the
yeah.
soil
I,
degrades over time if it's not treated in this way.
I'd imagine the European Union had a bit of influence on
I
farming.
think so
I
too.
I don't know. I don't know if you watch the Clarkson. Do you watch
Yeah, it's
Clarkson's?
fascinating. Yeah, it's
Really
fascinating.
good because I think it's beginning to highlight some of the major issues which most people are ignorant to of the challenges of farming. I've got farming family back in Ireland as well, and it's not a job; it's a vocation. You're on all the time. There's no like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
just
I'm
this.
gonna take a holiday. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, like just having this knee injury, it's meant like we don't have any. Me and the family, we live on eggs pretty much a lot of the time, simply because it's just we love it. And now, we've missed this window for planting, so it means we're not going to have our tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers or everything for the summer, and it makes a big difference. We were growing
and is there
300
is
lettuce, and yeah, I mean, you can get people to come and work for you, but
I was
then
going to ask you, is there
yeah,
is there a good sense of community within the area?
yeah. I mean, our neighbours are all great, but they grew up when they were young planting tomatoes, and they're paying the price now with back injuries and stuff like. They just want to sit in their tractors and go up and down and use machinery. Nobody wants to
That's
do Nobody wants to do the labor. Here we have mostly the labor is migrant workers. It's all either from India or um, Moldova or somewhere like that. You won't
Because
find
they can't get Portuguese people to do the
you
jobs.
won't find a Portuguese person using their hands in the land. Not around here anyway. Not
Yeah,
employed anyway. They might be doing their own gardens and stuff, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, I suppose that happens here. Like, like this is part of as countries evolve and they start establishing from, like because they're kind of like redeveloping, I suppose. Like, well, the first thing that happens is all the young people end up moving to all the major cities
hmm
because they want jobs, and then they leave the country because they want to get jobs which pay well because Portugal's wages aren't at the right level. So then you leave all of these towns and villages empty all over the
yeah.
country,
You
which is
get a
one.
brain
I think
drain.
yeah, you got a
Yeah,
brain
it's
drain.
like a
Yeah.
desertification, not only of the land but of the
Yes. Yeah.
villages
Exactly. Yeah.
and then your
Knowledge
and the culture
and skill.
and the
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah. Skill and culture. Exactly. Yeah. I think that was one of the other things as well is that like people were like sometimes I'd post a video or something and they'd be like, "Stop telling people about these little towns," and I'm like, I guarantee you that little town will be delighted if they get more people into it because that little town. One of the things that helps it survive is tourism. Is that it brings money back
Yeah.
into the area. Of course, it has to be done in a sustainable way, but it's like like some of these, like especially around how do you pronounce the lake again? Because it's such a funny word.
Alcava, Alcava.
Al Alcava. Yeah, I went to Alcava with my Sheila camper van there I think it's 2 years ago, and we went into one of these little towns, which I think is if you officially type into Google Maps, you want to go to Alcava, it brings you to this tiny little whitewashed town with it was stunning, but it was like a ghost town. It was just like I was like stunning, and to see like the old people out drinking beers out in the street, but like you don't see very many young people around. It's
Yeah.
mainly an older community, who are keeping that place alive, which is kind of sad to see. And that happens in Ireland, happens everywhere. But if you could try to find a way, I think Ireland tried to do it, but didn't do a great job. But presume UK did as well, which is what's the term when we not desaturate, but where the government tried to decentralize, yeah,
Yeah.
decentralization is one of the methods to try to bring people back to those communities because they're struggling, aren't they, very heavily.
Yeah, I mean, I always think, with the housing problem, there was a lot of complaints that it's very difficult to afford housing in a lot of the cities now. And I was like, well, it's one of the reasons why we moved to Alentejo because we wanted a house, we wanted space, and we can afford it
Yeah,
here. We can if we go on the coastline there, we wouldn't have been able to afford something this size.
yeah, no, I know
So,
exactly.
that it kind of works. Hopefully, people start. And if you can work more remotely, the road system and the infrastructure here is great. So
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, absolutely as well. And that part of the Alcava is just that whole part of Portugal to me is just
yeah, it's crazy.
different level beautiful. It's just like so stunning. I believe it gets very, very hot though in the summer, doesn't it?
It gets really hot. I mean, we are lucky because we're in a zone where we still get the Atlantic effect. But literally,
Sure.
you can go 10 kilometers a little bit further inland from us, and it's baking hot. If you go nearer to Beja, it's really, really hot. It gets more like
You go,
Extremadura and
you
stuff.
go near a what? What the word did you say? A Tabasia?
Beja, yeah, Beja. That's kind of the nearest city to us,
Okay,
and
yeah.
that gets hot. That gets, and then we have Everett to the north, which is not quite as hot, but yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a really cool area. This is just another place to discover.
Do you have the night? Do you have the night skies in your area? I believe
Yeah,
there's another Portugal that is astronomy. Do you have amazing skies at night?
yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have any light pollution here at all. Yeah,
Wow.
really big clear skies. Actually, when we have family, it's funny because when you actually live in it, you don't notice it so much. But we have family that come down from Porto and Lisbon, and they come and stay. And the first thing that they do is when after sunset they're outside and they're all looking up at the sky, looking up at the stars. And I'm like, "What are you all doing?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, the stars. Yeah, yeah, yeah."
You're so used to it. You're like, oh yeah,
Well, yeah, you get into the day to day. Like I'm constantly
yeah,
looking at the
yeah.
ground, picking weeds. Rather than looking up at the stars.
Yeah.
It's
I suppose a
funny.
bit of both. Bit of both.
Yeah,
Bit of both.
you need to create
I think
balance.
honestly, like people like say, I'm 4 years. I'm here 4 years, and honestly, I'm every day I wake up, I'm like the level of gratitude I have to be here is just I'm just so delighted. Like I walk out in my street and I see my local residential area, even though I'm in the city, and I see my local neighbors, and I look at the beautiful city, and I'm like, it hasn't lost its beauty.
Yeah,
For me, it's just as beauty. I like every time I turn a corner. I'm into photography as well, so I'm like, wow, I'm so grateful for the beauty that we have.
yeah,
Like I say, this country just never stops wowing me, and it's just a
yeah.
constant wow, 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 wow,
Yeah,
wow.
it gradually unfolds itself to you, doesn't it? It's like
Oh,
it's like a kind of consistent journey, and there's no reason like, well, okay, I've sort of moved from this place to move to another place, and I keep going through a new adventure each move we have. We're on the farm adventure at
like
the
that.
moment, and
Because I think that's for me is I kind of like I love the city and I'm a party head. I still love my clubbing nights.
yeah,
So I would still need, even though I really want to go further out, I still would need some level of proximity so I can come to the city because I like both. I like the
yeah.
total calmness and I like the total madness. And I like the chaos.
Yeah, talking about total madness, how was the festival last night?
We just went to a local. One of our friends was having a birthday, so we were
Ah, okay.
in not too far from. I can't remember the name of it. It's quite a local residential area. Um, but it wasn't like I wasn't in the Alfama, the main district. So it was kind of a more
Ah,
local bar. People outside doing the sardines and the music playing.
nice.
So
Yeah,
it's good. I think again, I probably have to be careful about certain subject matters, but I just think when you look at like people, for me, one of the things that I understand people, probably people are angry and stuff over certain situations that are going on, and I get that and I respect that. But I'm like, if I could bring you to somewhere like they talk about how amazing it is to live in Ireland and UK, I'm like, not
yeah,
really that good. It's like when you see the reality on the ground and you realize that in Ireland, if you wanted to close down a street to have a party, you'll have 16 committees giving out about how, "Oh, you can't close down my business for a week."
yeah,
And I think our Irish people are always told about like, oh, a great sense of community. I've never seen a greater sense of community than this country anywhere in the world. I've
yeah.
never ever experienced such a way of celebrating life than Portugal does it. I'm just like, for me, I believe maybe Brazil do it really good as well, but for me, that you can shut down a whole city for 48 hours. And it's just like, whatever, we're shutting down all the streets and we're going to have parties on the street. Try that in Ireland. See how
Mm,
far you'll get. It'll never happen, you know. It's like, for me, they do, even though they may not have the financial stability that maybe, say, Ireland or UK has, it's like they get quality of life
yeah,
more so
it
than anyone else.
almost doesn't seem to matter, you know. It's like, okay, we haven't got so much disposable income, but we're still going to concentrate on what's important: the family, the lunch, the you
And
know,
your neighbors, and you're
yeah,
bringing people together and celebrating, like, because they really celebrate life like in an incredible way. It's
mm,
just like, for me, that really blows my mind still to this day is like we were in that local area last night, and we were and this was like a mixture of, we were a group of us together, and there was Portuguese and expats together, whatever, all partying together. And it was just the local people, you're in your local Tashka, and but there was no feeling of, it was just everyone's together. There's no feeling of you're separate to the
yeah,
community. That it's like you are part of the community. And for me, that's something very, very unique and special.
hmm
Really, this month is such a great example. But like, you don't have to go. Like, you're probably, I don't know what it's like in your district, but you probably have local festivals, do you, and stuff?
yeah, I think, but you know what? Even on a smaller scale than that, I have one of these problems where if I go into a big space with lots of people, I start to get a bit sketchy. I don't know what it's called.
Like,
Just I can't stand being bumped into and things like that. It's just a stress thing that I developed over time. Like I had to stop going to concerts. I love going to see music concerts, but I can't handle the crowds. But just locally here, where our neighbours, our little old farmer neighbours, they've invited us to come and sing in the community centre here, Cantada Alentejo. Come to sing the old Portuguese Alentejo songs. So just on
Hmm.
that sort of scale, they were so happy to. invite us and to bring us to something that is very local, very, very traditional, and without a thought. They didn't think it was unusual that Rita's Portuguese, but it wouldn't be unusual for me to be there as well. I think it was
Yeah,
very welcoming.
yeah.
In rural districts, sometimes if you're in the village and you can see the guys all sat outside the cafes, the old boys, can be a little bit intimidating, sometimes.
Yeah, no, yeah,
But you just
yeah.
have to smile and say "bon dia" or whatever, and then they'll start talking, and big smiles.
Just in the value of a smile in
Yeah,
Portugal is anywhere in the world. But I think that I'm generally probably a pretty positive kind of person and just love meeting people. And therefore, in my 4 years, I've only ever received the energy I give out back, if that makes sense.
yeah.
So, and no matter where I've been from the very north. I remember we went up to Jerez, and it was the middle of summer, but it was pissing rain, and we stopped in this local Tashka, and I think it was our first few months here actually, and she didn't speak one word of English, and we didn't speak. We had like a handful of Portuguese words, but she chatted to us for I think an hour
Yeah.
through sign language and any other form of communication. And she was like, she was an older lady, and she was like totally welcoming. You could feel it inside her heart. She was just wanted us to. She was like a mother looking after us, kind of going, like, and she was lovely, and she kept chatting to us, and it was like, and I'm like, that's special, for me. That's I
Yeah.
think when you've got a good energy here, you're very much welcomed here as well. So.
Yeah, it's one of the big driving forces for me doing this podcast, and I'm sure for you as well. It's like, well, I almost feel because we are here and we are enjoying it so much, we have like a responsibility to just tell the story a little bit more, so that other visitors come with a little bit more respect.
Yeah, I think
I'm
yeah,
not going to say respect, but more sensitive to you know the culture, and just more understanding, more learning, more education of a place. It's only positive, I think.
yeah, I would agree with you. I think for me, I think that's the whole point is try to build a. It's very easy to come somewhere and do the whole, and we all have a duty and we all have a responsibility when we travel to try to and for us to try to respect when we travel somewhere. But it's like remembering that you're visiting. Somebody posted a comment I think yesterday or today or something saying stop coming. You're destroying our country. You're coming in and da, 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 And I was like, yeah, but like, tourism is part. Every one of us probably loads of most Portuguese people travel as well, and they go to other countries. It's like it's trying to like to. I always loved that old phrase. It was a camping phrase in Ireland, which was to leave no trace.
Yeah,
So it's kind of to go somewhere, but to really, really take care of what it is whilst you're there, and try to integrate and try to, even if you can learn a few words when you're traveling, to speak to people and respect that sometimes there's a cultural difference, and then maybe there's customs which you need to be conscious of. That it's like, I'm not going to hear, like, when you're young, of course lots of young people get drunk and they go around screaming, but I
yeah,
think to be more sensitive to, like, to read the room, that
yeah.
expression, to read the room.
It's
Try to
probably,
read.
I think probably the Portuguese in some ways, if they look at sort of what's happening at the moment in Albufeira, and some, that's it's probably where a lot of that negative energy comes from, because we are getting a lot of people coming over and just getting completely smashed and getting naked in the
I,
bars, and
when people,
dangerous
yeah,
consequences. A young lad, I think it was a Scottish lad. He literally walking home drunk and fell down a ravine and died. So like it's just trying to be sensible, isn't it? Like, yeah, I'm not of that sort of nature where I'm going to go and get completely smashed and start smashing tables in a country which I don't know, or in a country I do know. But
no, well, yeah, but I think that's yeah. So yeah, I won't go into what the causality of it is, but there is that kind of like there's a duty of. Um, I traveled to Ibiza many years ago, and I know Ibiza had become like they had a whole new, like, because it began, like, its tourism industry began in the 60s with a certain type of clientele who were
mm,
very kind of affluent, and it grew and grew and grew over the years as a Spanish a place for kind of like people who were a bit more affluent would go to it. And then I think in the 90s it became like, the clubbing scene, but it got such a large amount of kind of certain type of visitors who would visit that Ibiza as a place, I remember chatting to them and they were saying we're trying really hard to like remove that element, to bring it back to what originally was, so not to let it to be destroyed by a group because it's not everybody, it's just a certain group who are not respecting their, I suppose if you send a group of young lads away together or young girls away together and all they're doing, and it kind of upsets me when you see a place and you go to it and all it is British or Irish food on the menu, all it is English flags everywhere, and it's like, well, that's not integration. All you're doing is, you're like, I've been to Albufeira, and just because of the town area, and then there's the strip, and even down there, you're walking through it, and it's like every single pub has got uh, Sky Sports or whatever, and they're all sitting out, and they're all like, I'm kind of going, what? Just destroy the whole town, It's like, anyway,
I don't understand
yeah.
it.
So I think,
Why would you? I suppose you're just going away for cheap beer and sun and sand. Maybe
yeah,
that's
yeah,
just it's that
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of package holiday mentality still, isn't it?
yeah. But yeah, I here. Look, I think there's lessons in all of these things. As I said, there's also a duty of responsibility by the government. Sometimes what happens is we get lots of money and we get excited by money, so therefore money becomes the priority, and therefore we forget our values and what we're trying to do. And I think there's a duty of responsibility by the government to also try to really think about sustainable tourism and to put practices in place to build sustainable tourism, to think about, so great that we're getting money and great that we're getting people visiting our country, but if we allow it to continue at the rate it's going, we're going to destroy the things which is what attracted people in the first place,
exactly.
So you end up burning something out like a battery, you end up using it to the point that it has no value anymore.
Exactly.
So it's really important that there's leadership, and I think that's probably something that lacks across the world in this day and age is good leadership, rather than management, so that people lead with vision, and vision requires forward thinking and long-term thinking. So
that could almost work, and it could almost be that there is a cap on the number of tourists. That's also a thing, because the more a place gets popular, the more crowded it gets, the more it loses the character. I know that a lot of places in Portugal, I'm not going to say where, but I've moved from places because they get to a point where I'm going to the supermarket, I'm going to the local cafes, I'm going, and I don't see many Portuguese anymore. So it's like I
yeah,
moved to Portugal because I wanted Portuguese
yeah.
culture.
I want to be part of a community. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't come here because I wanted just to be around tourists and
Here, look, as I said, something I was very proud of was I think Ireland did a very good job at it. And I was back. I was staying in a hostel. I went back to Ireland there. I think it was this time last year, and I stayed in a hostel because there was no bed to crash on, so booked into a hostel. But I was really impressed that they sent out an email, and I was like, obviously, it's the tourism board who have a kind of a remit or something, because I was sent an email that said, "Oh, you're arriving in Dublin tomorrow. Here's a list of suggested
oh,
things to
cool.
do."
Yeah.
Number one on the list was the Cliffs of Moher, which is I was laughing about because this is something I always laugh showing the model of sustainable tourism. So the Cliffs of Moher, if you land in Dublin, it's across the other side of Ireland. It's a 4-hour bus journey. Which means you do a 4-hour journey just to get there. Then you get to see the cliffs, and if it's foggy, you're not going to see anything, which happens probably 90% of the time. And then go on a little 2-hour journey on a bus to see local things and local cultural things, and then you do 4 hours back. So you leave. I think imagine you land in Dublin on Friday, you get up at I think it's 6:30 in the morning. You go to the main street in Dublin, you get on a bus, and you go off in this trap, and you're dropped back that evening at 7 p.m. or something. But that's genius. I'm like, that's really clever model. So I think sometimes you have to be careful about like rules and regulations where, like there's this number of people. It's like, creative thinking is a very good way so that's a very creative way of, imagine every single human being who lands in Dublin gets sent an email by their accommodation that has this list of things which are not in the city of Dublin to go
Okay,
and
I'm getting it. Yeah.
therefore, you're using creative thinking to go, okay, so let's get the people out and then move them
Yeah.
from the main stations, get them to the places where we want to build. We want to build these old towns which maybe need that financial growth again. Like, so I think it's about creative thinking. I think it's about being a bit, like thinking outside that expression I said, outside of the box thinking.
That method worked really well here because we have an airport. We have Beja Airport, and they're always complaining. They're thinking about doing a new one in Lisbon, and people flying into Faro, they're having problems with the check-ins or whatever. And I'm like, Beja Airport can take an the A380. It's
airport in Beja.
We have an airport in Beja, but there's no flights that go out of it. They fly Porto football team out of it. It's an old military, but they're trying to get it. The camera here is trying to get it as attract airlines to it because it's an hour and a half from Lisbon, an hour and a half from the Algarve, and it's also bang in the an hour to the beautiful beaches of Alentejo and all of the castles around here. So like saying what you're saying, rather than like sort of landing in the main airport and then just all, crowding in Lisbon or whatever, you could land in Beja, go see a few of the castles, the sites, and generate some of the tourism here, and then go to Lisbon or wherever.
I can see the comments on this one, Justin. The local people wanting to tell you.
Yeah.
They're like, what? No.
Yeah.
Please do not bring the Albufeira crowd.
Yeah, not the Albufeira. No, it's purely historical sites here, and beer is really expensive. But there is the eno-tourism here is absolutely really big, especially around some of the big wine producers in this area. That's something that's really nice to do.
The wine. I've been invited. There was the Better Tourism event was on, and I don't know if you got to go to it. Was on in Lisbon. It was really, really good. I just ended up chatting to so many people about towns that I did, especially in the Alentejo. The Alentejo stands were incredible, and lots of like history and lots of things I never knew about. And I was kind of going, oh my God, like another. It's like I have an endless amount of journeys I need to do around this country to see the rest of Portugal properly.
Well, you know what? I reckon we should definitely do this again. We're actually coming up to about another hour.
Oh yeah.
So maybe we're going to have to say goodbye and
thank you so much.
Let's make a plan to do this again because next time
I'd love to do something too, and we could do a reel together maybe.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. All right, Sam. Simple, secure currency transfers from once-in-a-lifetime property purchase of your dreams to everyday expenses. Currencies Direct helps you save time and money on international transfers. Rated excellent on Trustpilot with over 17,000 positive reviews. Spend like a local with their multi-currency MasterCard. Tap the link in the show notes to get started. Concentrate, I need to concentrate, stop the strain.